All right, so today we're going to learn about simple interest. Our goal is to calculate simple interest and also future values of loans. So some vocabulary to start us off. Again, you guys can just take notes on notebook paper. Interest. This is the dollar amount paid for lending money. The dollar amount paid for lending money. This is how much the bank pays you to leave your money in their establishment. Principal. Principal is the initial amount deposited or borrowed. So it's what you're starting out with, putting in or taking out. Interest rate is a percent determined by the lender or bank. Remember, our rate is usually given to us as a percentage. We will then convert it to a decimal. For example, 5% would be 0.05. And simple interest. This involves interest calculated only based on the principal, meaning the interest is not accruing or being recalculated on itself. In our next lesson next week, we will learn compound interest. But for right now, it will just be interest calculated only based on the principal alone. So here's our first formula. I equals PRT. I stands for interest. P stands for principal, which is our starting amount. R stands for rate, which is as a decimal. And T is our time. Make sure that it's always in years. So if I were ever to tell you for 8 months, you would have to convert that to years by taking 8 divided by 12. 8 months divided by 12 months to convert it to years. So example 1. You deposit $1,500 into a savings account for 2 years, which has an interest rate of 8%. What is the interest on the loan? So notice that $1,500 is our principal. So usually I just keep a little list off to the side. P equals 1,500. 2 years is our time. T is equal to 2. And our rate of 8%, changing that to a decimal, make sure you change it properly. Either divide by 100 or move the decimal 2 spaces to the left, 0.08. What is the interest on the loan? So that means we're solving for I. You actually can put I equals question mark. So we're going to start out with our formula. I equals PRT. And we're going to plug in that information. 1,500 in for P, 2 for T, and 0.08 for R. And all we have to do is calculate that all on our calculators. And you can use your graphing calculators, or you can compute this on any calculator that you find online or on your phone. We should get $240 as our final answer. Okay, now they're not all going to be this simple. Sometimes you'll have to use some algebra to solve for one of the missing variables. The next case, you deposit $9,000 in a savings account for 12 years, which has an interest rate of 7%. So again, we have our principal, what we deposit, our time in years, and our rate, which we will need to convert to a decimal. What is I? So this one is just as simple as the last one. See if you can try it on your own. Plugging those values in, 9,000 for P, 0.07 for R, and 12 for T. Multiplying, we should get $7,560 in interest. Again, the biggest mistake I'll see on this is you guys forget to change your percent to a decimal. So make sure that you do that. All right, when the loan is repaid, the interest is added to the principal to find the total amount due. Or if you're putting money into a savings account, at the end, the interest would be added back to what you originally put in. So PV, or just our P, stands for present value, which is the principal borrowed present, currently. Future value is the amount due, or how much money you will have at the end of a certain time period. The formula to calculate this is as follows. A, which again is our future value, P, remember, is our principal, R is our rate, and T is our time. Remember that the rate does need to be as a decimal. And I should have mentioned, you don't have to memorize any of these formulas. You do need to write them down, and then you can use them on your homework. You can use them on the online mini quizzes as well. All right, so example 2, a loan of $1,000 has been made at 3% for 4 years. Find the loan's future value. So if we're finding the loan's future value, that means that we are finding our A value. We don't know what A is. We do know then that P is 1,000. R needs to be 3%, which is 0.03. T is 4, and we're looking for A. So this time we're starting out with this formula. Plugging in our values, 1,000 goes in for P, 0.03 goes in for R, 4 goes in for T. And then you can do it piece by piece if you'd like, or you can type that whole thing in your calculator exactly as you see it. I usually do the order of operations first, so I did 4 times 0.03 is 0.12, added that to 1 to get 1.12, and then I multiplied those together to get $1,120. But again, you can type it all into your calculator if you prefer. So it'd be 1,000 parentheses 1 plus 0.03 times 4, and it'll get it just as quickly. So that's our loan's future amount. That's not how much interest we're earning. So if the original amount was 1,000 that we put in, and we have 1,120, that means that the interest we earned is really just $120 extra over 4 years. Okay, B and C are going to get a little bit more challenging algebraically. Okay, this one says you plan to save $5,000 for a trip to Europe in 5 years. You decide to purchase a certificate of deposit, which is called a CD, from your bank, which pays a simple interest rate of 4%. How much must you put in the CD now? Now means present value, which is telling me that I don't know what my P value is. Okay. So this plan to save, this is a future amount we're looking for. That's actually A. A is 5,000. T is 5 years. R is 0.04. And then as I said, P is our unknown. So we take this formula again, and this time we're going to be plugging in on the left side. So that A value is going to go over here. Oops. A little sneak peek at the answer. So 5,000 goes in on the left. We'll leave P as our unknown value. 1 plus plugging in our rate and our time. Now this time you actually do want to perform the mathematics inside the parentheses using, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, parentheses first. So we'll multiply those together to get 0.2, add that to 1 to get 1.2. And then we just use inverse operations. So right now I see multiplication going on between P and 1.2. What's the inverse of multiplying? Dividing. So we need to divide both sides by 1.2. Leaving me with my answer, which I have right over here, $4,166.67. Always round to the nearest hundredths place, which is the nearest cent or penny when we're using money. And our last one, similar situation, but I think it's a little bit harder to solve this one. You place $5,000 in a savings account. After 7 years, the balance is $6,000. So this is our present value. This is going to be our future value, which I don't know why they don't use F for future, but they use A. What simple interest rate is being applied? So again, P is 5,000. T is 7 for years. And A is 6,000. We are looking this time for R. So starting with our equation, A equals P times 1 plus RT. Plug in your values. This time 6,000 is going in on the left, 5,000 on the right, 1 plus R times 7. Now I know this is looking a little bit weird right here, R times 7. You can write this as 7R instead if you prefer. So most of us see the coefficient before the variable. Then you have two options. You can distribute the 5,000, which is actually the longer option, but it does work. If you like distributing, you can go right ahead and do that. I usually just undo the multiplication that I see first, because this is being multiplied. I'll undo that with division. So I divide by 5,000 on both sides, which gets me 1.2 equals, and again, these would cancel each other out. So I'm just left with 1 plus 7r. Then I would subtract 1 on both sides. And lastly, divide by 7. Just undoing addition with subtraction, undoing multiplication with division. Now your final answer this time is going to need to be converted back to a percent. So at the very end of this problem, we need to multiply by 100 or move our decimal 2 spaces over, making this 2.857%, which I rounded to be 2.9%. And then our closure, this is time for you to test your skills. I'm going to leave these 2 questions up for you to try on your own. You do not need to submit your answers anywhere, but this is just to make sure you know what you're doing before you move on for the next lesson. I'm going to pause the video, and you should pause it too while you complete the assignment. The answers will be on the next slide. So go ahead and pause your video now. And then the answers to our closure should be as follows. The answer to number 1 was 2,125, and the answer to number 2 was 5%, and I have my work shown there.